Well, my Bachelor Nation fans, Fantasy Suite Week has arrived on The Bachelorette. Our leading ladies, Rachel Recchia and Gabby Wendy, know how monumental this week is, and they aren't playing around because I'm here with host Jesse Palmer as he breaks down the most talked about moments from last night and how this season of the franchise has helped shape the future of the brand. Mexico laid as the perfect backdrop for all things romance for the Fantasy Suites. Rachel's first overnight was with Avon, who put his heart on his sleeve, confessing his love for her. And she ultimately said she feels like this journey is working for her. But it wasn't paradise for everyone, right? Gabby sent Johnny home because he couldn't see himself engaged next week or so. And then in an unexpected surprise, Gabby received a note from Eric asking if they could meet. And he called her out, expressing that he feels as though she cheated on him during the fantasy suite. Just wow. So what are your thoughts on what all went down last night? Do you think Gabby made the right choice sending Johnny home? Is it fair for Eric to feel what he's feeling? Like, take me into your thoughts.
Yeah, it's funny, having lived it myself and having been in those shoes, this is a very, very emotional week when you get to fantasy suites, because I think everybody's very aware of where we are at this point in the journey and what's at stake. And I think for Gabby and Rachel, hopefully that's an engagement. Hopefully that's falling in love and finding their person. And I think from the men this season at this point, we're sort of seeing an entire spectrum of feels. I think some of them, as you mentioned, are locked and loaded. They're all in on their respective bachelorette, and they are in love, and they've fallen in love, and they're ready to get down on one knee. And then there are others that are getting cold feet, and it's the time to be honest and be forward and really share how they feel. Some of them don't think they can get there. And, for both Gabby and Rachel, every single date, every single overnight is just so critical and so important, because it's so hard at this juncture to find clarity. I think everybody's very conflicted, and it's emotional. And it's not just for Gabby and Rachel, but as we're seeing, it's emotional for Tino, for Eric, and for the rest of these men as well.
But what do you make of these cheating allegations? It's hard for me to wrap my mind around that when you take into context the show and how it's laid out. I mean, is that something that you agree with?
It's funny. It's something that I think has polarized Bachelor Nation for years and years and years. This whole thought of an ultimatum, because that's sometimes what it feels like, and whether that's right or it's wrong. I never have a problem with somebody expressing how they truly feel and how conflicted they are because of this scenario. I will say, it's easy for all of us to go, well, dude, it's the show. Of course you've watched it. That's how this thing works. But I can also say for anybody that when they finally get into that situation and they start feeling the way they feel about somebody, it becomes so much more real, and you can feel a certain way that's never expected. I think part of what upset Gabby so much was they had that conversation off camera. And the fact that, I think he intended for that moment to be a good moment, to tell her, hey, I miss you, and this is how I feel about you, and I'm in love, and here's what my hopes are. But to have all that put back in front of camera, I think that sort of blindsided Gabby and sort of put her on the spot. And so I can completely understand and appreciate how Gabby felt in that situation. And what we're going to see next is what's the fallout of that? What's going to happen? How's Gabby going to respond to that? Because I do think there was a bit of a feeling of betrayal that Gabby was feeling in that moment. And I can completely appreciate and understand that.
Yeah. Well, let's take a trip down memory lane. When Clayton Echard was the Bachelor, he landed in hot water when he told Gabby and Rachel he was in love with both of them. And we all know how that ended. Gabby and Rachel told some of their suitors that they are falling in love with them. Maybe the falling is that caveat there. But what do you think motivated Gabby and Rachel to do this on their own season, especially considering the heartbreak that they each had when, it happened with Clayton?
Yeah, it's really, really difficult. And again, I don't think anybody expects to be in that kind of situation, expects to have these such strong feelings for multiple people at the same time, particularly Gabby and Rachel, based on kind of what they went through last year at this time in Iceland. I think with Clayton, I think for both of them right now, they're trying to find clarity, and, it's a balancing act at this point between expressing how you feel, finding the right timing, not misleading anybody. And I think they're both trying to be very, very careful about that. But you can see it's hard because they both are really feeling strong feelings, and they are indeed falling in love with multiple people. And I think that's part of what makes the fantasy suite this time in the journey so tricky and so difficult.
Yeah. It's undoubtedly been a historic season for Bachelor Nation. I mean, led by two bachelorettes the whole time, Rachel and Gabby. So rightfully so, there are critics, though, who believe the two bachelorette format isn't sensible. So thinking about the success of the show from the very beginning, do you see this format being played out again in the future?
One of the things I've really appreciated about this past season of The Bachelorette is just the friendship between Gabby and Rachel and the love they have for each other that's really helped support each other. They've been there to confide in one another and help each other through their respective highs and lows. I know, having lived it myself, sometimes I wish I would have had a buddy that I could have talked to throughout the process, because you just encounter so many scenarios and so many emotions that you could never have anticipated or prepared yourself for. I know that the franchise is always trying to do new things to try to make it feel fresh and provide different perspectives on everything. It would not surprise me if there was two bachelors in the future. Obviously, these decisions are way out of my pay grade. I don't make them, but it wouldn't surprise me if down the road, if we did one day potentially see two bachelors in the same season.
Speaking of your pay grade, your job, how's it going for you as host?
I love, it's been amazing. It's been great. What made this so much fun for me was the familiarity I think I had with both Gabby and Rachel, having gotten to know them during Clayton's season of The Bachelor, and obviously having been there and sort of witnessed everything that happened. I just wanted this thing to work out for them so much. I feel so much more emotionally invested in both Gabby and Rachel, hoping that this ends up positive for the two of them. I'm such big fans of both Gabby and Rachel. I just love them both. I just could not be more proud of them and more in awe of both of them. So for me, this has really been a special experience. And I feel lucky to have been on this journey with two incredible women.
Just take me back a little bit again. Have you had any deja vu moments while hosting this season?
Yes.
You did this.
Yeah, I know. Yes, I did. There are deja vu moments, and there are PTSD moments as well.
Take me into one of those moments where you're like, "Ooh, I'm glad I made it through that."
It's usually the rose ceremonies, because of course I forgot somebody's name at my very first rose ceremony back on my season. So I'm always sitting there and I'm watching, and I'm of course I have to be there at the rose ceremony, and I'm always like, oh my God, it doesn't matter how many years go by, it still comes back, and I'm still reminded of it. But I think Fantasy Suites is a great example as well. Again, like I'm sort of reliving the entire spectrum and the roller coaster, because I'm so excited for both Gabby and Rachel, because I know what's on the horizon if everything goes well. But then I'm also reminded of how tough this is, because you want to make a decision and you want to have 1,000% confidence and conviction. And oftentimes, even when you make the final decision, you still don't have that. You still, in a lot of ways, are taking a leap of faith.
Jesse, we're friends, right? Is there anything you can tease for me? Your old pal Janine, as to what's to come. I know, but I have to ask.
Yeah, there's more emotion. There's a lot more drama still to come. So much happens in these final days, and these final moments, and these final dates in Mexico. You have to tune in to see. This whole thing has been historic, obviously, having two bachelorettes. They've taken total control, and they're going to make the decisions at the end of the day that they feel is going to lead to their own happiness. So that's what's coming up.
Okay, they make decisions. All right, that's good. We have something.
Only because we're friends. Only because you and I go back so far.
Way back. I love it.